Welcome to the Project Iron Boomerang Podcast. I'm your host, Marie Ferguson, and in this series we're diving deep into the world of steelmaking, not just as an industry, but as a driving force behind economies, innovation, and a sustainable future. In episode 1, Forging the Future, I sit down with Shane Condon, founder and CEO of Project Iron Boomerang, and Peter Glennie, CEO of Retrocast, to discuss the game-changing impact of steel production. This podcast is for industry leaders and everyday people alike, bringing you the stories behind the steel. Let's dive in. Hi everybody, welcome to our first episode of our podcast series. Here we have the founders of Project Iron Boomerang and Retrocast, Shane Condon and Peter Glennie. We're here to talk about the Whyalla steelmaking issue and the future of steel. I'm really interested about your background. I'd love for you to share a little bit about Shane, who you are, what Project Iron Boomerang is, and also Peter, after Shane, about what you do at Retrocast.
Yes, Project Iron Boomerang was started in, it wasn't called Project Iron Boomerang in 2005. And the Peter government and the Coordinator Generals, who are bureaucrats of the Queensland government, I think they have 270,000 employees today, but they saw the potential of Project Iron Boomerang, an old idea that the Elkie Peterson and Lang Hancock proposed, building a continental railway to take met coal to the west and iron ore to the east and have steel mills at both ends of the continent. The Continental Rail, which our survey has disclosed, is 3,300 k, and that will open up the rest of Australia, east-west across the continent, on the 21st parallel, and develop one of the biggest resource mining areas equal to the rest of the world. Some geologists, leading world geologists that I've spoken to, resource companies, developing everything from uranium to rare earths, copper, silver, lead and zinc, sulphate of potash, fertiliser to grow food, which was short during COVID. So Iron Boomerang will produce steel. 20% our figures in exhaustive studies. Some of the best people in the world and the biggest steel companies helped us. And I've sat in the Beijing boardroom of Baowu Steel with the CEO of Baowu and her executives. And she said, "You'll be the only one who can compete with China, Mr. Condon." We collapsed the supply chain of sending nearly 1 billion tonne of iron ore to China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and about 85% of it, 1 billion tonne of iron ore, and the ships come back 9,000 k empty. The total journey is 18,000 k, and the ships are from 200,000 tonne capacity to 300,000 tonne. The iron ore is only 60 Fe, 40% dirt, 320 million tonne of dirt, which the world steel industry is wasting money, carting to China, Japan, South Korea and Taiwan, and coming back empty. So the freight efficiency on the iron ore on some of the world's biggest ports and ships and railway lines is only 30%. For the met coal, it's 100%. This is tens of billions of dollars of net profit denial annually by the world steel industry. It's one of the most inefficient things that the world has ever done in mankind's history. When Marco Polo went back from China on the Silk Road, he went back with his camels full. It will reduce carbon by 6 times. It will reduce just mathematically. It's an outstanding world project. The world needs Iron Boomerang as much as Australia does. We should do it. Now, I'm sitting beside a very good friend of mine, Peter Glennie from Retrocast. When he was young, he made the first logos in the 1970s for Hammersley Iron, which started the Pilbara, Australia's #1 and #2 exports of met coal and iron ore. Australia would be third world without them. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Shane, for that introduction. I met Shane probably around 6-7 years ago now. We hit it off pretty much straight away, we both love the steel industry and we love Australia. We want to make it the best possible thing we can do for this country. We're not young lads anymore, but we've had a lot of miles travelled between us, and we want to put that knowledge to good use. I help the world, Australia, and future generations. In terms of iron and steel making in Australia, it's been declining for around 40, 50 years.
Yes.
Foundry after foundry have just gone bust or collapsed. Newcastle Steelworks was a major blow to the industry. It wasn't exactly an up-to-date plant, but there was still a lot of world-class things went on within the plant, and the decision to shut was in BHP's hands. We would have been powerless to do anything about it, and the government of the day didn't even want to get involved.
With your role at Retrocast, what impact do you hope to make with your company and the industry that you're in for those that are listening with this project?
At Retrocast, I started just over 20 years ago now. I'm about 24 years at the moment. Retrocast is a way of keeping me inbred and also trying to keep part of the industry alive. The knowledge and the practice and the things that went on in the foundries and laboratories, and they're all still in my head. We put them into practice here at Retrocast. We service a lot of industries such as the agricultural industry and the sugaring industry, refining of metals and alloys. There is a lot more we could do. However, like all good decisions governments make, they decided to offshore the industry, making it extremely difficult for us to compete on the world scene against countries like China and others, but mainly China. This really is where we're at. When I met Shane, I was excited because I saw Iron Boomerang as a way of bringing back iron and steel making to Australia. And not just the primary steel making, but secondary steel making and, more importantly, manufacturing downstream.
And casters in the third precinct.
Casters.
They need the same services as the steel.
Idea of
centre.
An area adjacent to the blast furnace BOS complexes of PIB, as Shane's just said, is we take advantage of that group mentality, share services. We're able to share facilities such as the world-class largest oxygen plant in the world. So that can be on tap at the foundry, ready to use in the EAF process, or the electric arc furnace, to produce high-grade steels. And also we can use iron as a feed in there as well to adjust alloys and make whatever we want.
Amazing.
So it's all very exciting.
As discussed over the, is it 6-7 years?
Yeah.
Australians can't believe this. We've abandoned car making, manufacturing to the point of probably the worst example in the Western world. It's hard to imagine, but the Western world's doing it quite successfully as well.
Yeah.
We'll produce, by having the third precinct that uses the stockyards, the fully integrated purpose design supply chain, Belt and Road doesn't even come close to equaling the efficiency of that purpose design. Ships, ports, trains that go continental that deliver nearly half the world's future supply of resource development in WA and Queensland. Their competitiveness will be better than China's.
Definitely.
We're talking about 100 casters producing titanium. They might produce something for your leg that they insert. The secondary product is baseload power from other gases. The country's going back to gas, but we have our own gas and we're independent, no grid costs, which can be 50 to 60% of our costs. Our energy costs are the worst in the Western world. We haven't got a hope of ever developing industry.
So Shane and Peter, I'm really excited just after listening to you, because it's my generation and the generation of our children and grandchildren that are now having to deal with the repercussions of all of this loss in the industry. And something that's really sparked me is this is the foundation for building nations, for building industry, for building buildings, homes. And one of the things that I really loved connecting with you both is that you guys are industry experts in your field. And I love working with leaders and finding solutions to help not only the young people that I get to work with in community, but business owners. And like you said, this is game changing, this is visionary, this is wisdom that we get to now piece together and create something amazing, not only for Australia and its future, but something that is globally revolutionizing. It's been interesting to notice what's happening in the media now. One of the founding companies, seeing what's happened in its evolution and changes. I'd love for you both to speak into what you've noticed.
I see personally there's probably about 4 scenarios we could look at for our. And one of them, the government's proposed federal and state intervention, basically spending our money to prop the industry up and revitalise what's there, to keep it going. 2 is to do nothing. 3 would be taken under PIB's umbrella and allow Whyalla to become partly shared, integrated into PIB model. Now, the 4th would be to retain the long products division only, allow the blast furnace and BOS to be cut down and put in the EAF and supply the steel slab from other sources, such as Kembla or abroad. So they're the main scenarios I see. We can't afford to let these small products shut down. So in a way, the government's move is the correct way, but we need to think about how we go about it and not to waste money. And that's why I tend to think that the PIB inclusion, or including
in the master plan,
would be the way to go, because you'll be having experts dealing with experts and they'll be able to manage for the best outcome for the country and the world.
I think we need to explain the PIB model is to make first stage steel in Australia, consolidate the met coal and iron ore and limestone are the 3 big products 3 times. So you're not carting with an empty return 3 times the steel making materials. Australia leads the world in iron ore supply as number 1, 60% and increasing. With met coal it's higher, it's 70% and increasing world dependence by the world for seaborne steelmaking materials. This is an incredible future opportunity for Australia. Now, the other thing that the Iron Boomerang Railway Line does is it opens up the East Pilbara. Now, I've never announced this, but I've known it for many years, and this is a first. The East Pilbara will develop the hematite and the magnetite. Magnetite's more expensive to mine. You've got to grind it and process it and it goes through a different process, it can go into the blast furnace. We'll have 320 to 350 million tonne of new iron ore mines, 800k to Port Hedland, but less than 800k to Queensland. So all of a sudden we go from 1 billion tonne to the potential to produce 1.3. Now the Australian economy is not going that well. The world needs that. The world needs 1,000 million tonne of steel over the next 30 years for the Asian century primarily. In our backyard, Indonesia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Philippines, these are booming economies that will replace Australia in the G20 in the next 20, 30 years. This is the second stage rolling mill is where the need for steel is. We've consolidated the ore 3 times and saved that many tens of billions, nearly $1 trillion, annually of steel making net profit. The Chinese know this, the boardrooms of Japan, steel companies, the governments of Japan, South Korea, China, they all told me. They thought, I was no good, I couldn't get the governments to get it done. It wasn't my fault entirely. They said, we know your politics, this is for the world. The world needs Iron Boomerang. And Australia's good people have had it too good for too long. And I hope this is a wake-up call. Millions of Australians, I hope. Not for my ego, for Australia's very survival and prosperity. If people are prosperous, they don't go to war. The second stage rolling mill is where the mass market is. The slab, bloom, billet or hot roll coil goes through the rolling mill. Some rolling mills are 1 kilometre long. We stop at a quarter of the way and see the different sections of the rolling mill. These things cost billions to build. So when we started looking at Whyala's case, which we've studied for 5 years more, visited the plant when it was One Steel, and hosted by our shareholders, who are one of the biggest engineering firms in the world at the time. They were running the mines, Iron Monarch and Iron Knob, which founded Australia's steel industry. BHP did that, and they ran payloads each way, coastal ships from the coastal mines to Port Pirie, to Newcastle. The iron ore came from those places to Newcastle to create the steel industry. Rail is much more expensive than ship. So finished steel is very expensive to freight, isn't it? Yeah. I sat in the Baowu Steel boardroom with the Chinese female chemical engineer, and I said, if you have finished steel, the freight can cost you more. How many kilometres would you go on a brand new 4-lane, 6-lane, 8-lane highway? How far would you go before the freight was worth more? The steel is often damaged and has to be melted again. How long would you go? She said 400 to 600 kilometres. The freight's worth more than the steel that they're sending because it's at a wholesale big discount on major projects. So we need $1 billion worth of rail for our continental rail. We could finance a steel industry for the 68 kilogram to the metre, 4,000 kilometres of 2 rails, 4,000 kilometres of case-hardened 68 kilogram to the metre railway line. That order is worth $1 billion. And if you can do what's called a long run rate, you can make more. I'm disclosing this for the first time after 10 years. It's no big deal to people that know the industry, but it is to Australians, and they need to hear this. You can finance a new steel industry off that one order, and a long run means you're not stopping and starting production. You might produce that rail for a week, and then you've got urgent customers wanting an RSJ, long products, or construction, long products. That's the only steel plant in Australia that produces that. Of the rail, there's only 4 to 5 companies in the world, steel companies, that produce that. The long product, the rail, can go on the train to Central, on the Darwin to Alice Springs Adelaide line, and we'll take 540,000 tonne of this rail, that's the order, can be delivered over 7-8 years. The governments often subsidise it at 60 or 70% of the cost. because they can sell it to the Pilbara. That's the rail they use in the Pilbara, the world's most efficient heavy haul rail system, developed originally by BHP Monash Rail Research, now called Monash Rail. They lead the world in heavy haul rail technology, and they're shareholders of Project Iron Boomerang. So it all comes to pass. The financiers will finance the steel industry, but it can't be done on electric arc and with high power costs. So we're actually digging a deeper hole financially. There's no future. You can't build a manufacturing industry unless you're cheaper than China. The only one in the world that's told to us by Bowu Steel CEO was, you'll be the only one. I was tough with them and they were tough with me. We met them over 10, 15 years. They got to know us. We treated each other with respect because we knew what we were doing. They taught me, all the steel companies of the world, the top 10. This is an incredible, once-in-a-century opportunity for Australia to back Project Iron Boomerang, to protect the long product. No country of Australia's G20 size can not have this industry. Is that correct? To the Prime Minister, to Dutton, please listen to this conversation, and we're happy to collaborate. We don't want to run the plant. I'm happy to collaborate with a 4.4 million tonne blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace, PIB modern plant, the world's most efficient it will be, and all the steel top 10s agree this will be it. This will be the most efficient. Already the world's biggest steel company has said that many years ago to me now.
What were you going to add to that?
Shame that it really would make Australia remain part of the G20.
Yes,
You know?
that's the difference.
And
45
and
degrees
it's
south,
a
45
game
degrees
changer.
north.
I know. It's a game changer and it's like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so what actually needs to happen right now, Peter? What needs to happen with the government, with the people, with what's happening in the industry? One thing that you think needs to happen now?
I think that what we've got to do is persuade the government of the day and talk to the people of Whyalla and let this be known throughout the land that what they're proposing with the EAF is not going to cop it long term, because when PIB comes online, they won't be able to compete with it here.
The steel industry has to plan 10, 20 years. This is where electoral cycles and financial support cycles just don't fit. It takes time. This is to China's advantage. They think long term, we don't. And they're going to win and we're going to lose. So we've got a choice to make. We don't have an option actually, not for my grandkids. I've got 8. He's got a few, but I'm doing it for 1 billion grandkids. I want to do this. As you get older, you're supposed to use your knowledge and experience and leave the world a better place. Mankind's been doing that. It's called survival. And it's an inherent part of the universe, dust to dust, 5 billion years ago. If we're prosperous, we don't go to war. We've got the Asian century, 2/3 of the world economy, happening in our backyard. These countries are going to take over. China's got a demographic problem of not they're going to be 30% empty. And Japan's got the same problem. Most of the Western countries aren't replacing themselves. That is huge. We lose 1 billion in the last 30 years of our life. That's big picture thinking. That's UN demographics, not mine. How do you plan for Brisbane to be 30% empty? What's that going to do to everyone's business?
Yeah.
So the Asian century, about 30 years, we can organise for this. It took 30 years for the last billion people to grow from 7 billion to 8. The billion before that took 72 years. But we're going to reach a peak, and we have to plan for that now. The steel industry is long-term planning, and you don't have a country. First of all, we need carbon for plants. If we don't have plants, we don't have oxygen. Then you need water. If you don't have those two, you're dead in minutes.
Healthy oceans.
And you got cement. Cement comes from the slag from the blast furnace. Now, if you use an electric arc furnace, there's hardly any or no secondary products. The secondary products from the steel industry, surplus power, 900 megawatts at both ends. The total power generated for phase 1 of 5 phases of Project Iron Boomerang, the total power is 3,000 megawatts. That's nearly half the total consumption of Queensland. When we have 5, we'll be able to be equal to New South Wales and probably Victoria thrown in. The greatest example of success of mankind, lifting from poverty to middle wealth. Even they've changed their thinking. The kids aren't replacing themselves. They're well educated, they're well fed. Protein makes the brain stronger. They don't want to work in a rice field. Nothing wrong with that. I'm a rural person myself, but teaches you great lessons. That's Iron Boomerang. Let's get this story out. Let's get millions on board. This man, I don't know of anyone with more knowledge from grassroots, practical, real, common sense knowledge and application. This is not going to change Australia, it changes the world. The West got to get its act together, otherwise it's over.
That's it.
And this can be a catalyst. We don't want to run, we want to be part of the model and part of the plan. Maybe BlueScope and Whyalla, even if the competitors at the second stage where they produce wholesale and retail steels. So the 4.4 million tonne blast furnace, PIB, one of 10, they can share 1 million tonne for BlueScope, for One Steel, Whyalla, One Steel Whyalla, and 3 million tonne for BlueScope at Port Kembla, Port Pirie, all those other places. Then they can send the slab to Japan if they haven't got production in Australia to the rolling mill. So it gives them diversity that they never had. This is going to save billions of net profit, billions in the world steel, and not individual steel companies, hundreds of millions.
They could also develop their own industry.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's One Steel and BlueScope could be in competition. The government, the Prime Minister, they don't know this. They need to include us with the SA government in charge of it. I'm very worried. When we met the production staff of One Steel 7, 8 years ago, they didn't want to let us go home. Those guys know what they're talking about. They've got 3, 4 generations of family that worked in the steel business. It's in their blood. Iron's is why your blood's red. That's the red centre of Australia. That's on the Project Iron Boomerang logo, the stylised boomerangs coloured in red ochre. It'll be more green, and we'll be exporting the slab with Andrew Trotter's Australia Farmers Mutual, 3,000 to 4,000 farmers, it may be 10,000 in future, with 100 million tonne of carbon farming credits, fully accredited by the best in the world. Access to markets, people buy organic food, buy half the amount of product in Coles and Woolies and Aldi, I suppose, and they pay 3 times more because it's organic. So there's the same for organic steel. I'm an export meat and seafood person originally. The steelmakers call me a critical perishable supply chain manager. The efficiencies of the supply chain, the efficiencies of coordinating scale, producing 22 million tonne of steel in a first stage steel mill. Everyone knows in big industry that if you've got scale, you're profitable and it's sustainable for a very long term. It's real, it's common sense. We don't have an option not to do Iron Boomerang. I'm not trying to capitalise on anyone. I just want it done. It's time to get behind it. We don't want to see money wasted. The people in the Whyalla Steelworks, they know this more than anyone. That they're worried that they're going to waste the money again.
No, I fully support Shane on what he said, and I just think it's time we done it. Stop mucking around. Let's do it right.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Shane and Peter. You've heard it here. From surviving to thriving, this is about forging our future. If you want to find out more, please get in contact with Shane Condon or Peter Glennie. We look forward to sharing more insights about Project Iron Boomerang soon.